Hello everyone, MC Tammer here, extremely honored and excited to be taking part in the Modders Got Talent series. For those of you who may not know who I am, I'm probably best known for making weapons and armor using only base game assets, in a process I call NIF bashing. Today I'm going to be giving you some commentary on a selection of my work that Mutant Mods has chosen to showcase, as well as doing a Q&A session at the end where I talk shit about various people, so you're not going to want to miss that. Welcome everyone to my Wasteland workshop. I'm ready to answer your questions that were submitted through Mutant Mods' YouTube community tab. Let's start with a question that was asked by multiple people, which is, where do you get your inspiration from? My main source of inspiration is stuff I see in movies, in video games, on TV, or on YouTube. I find guns mechanically interesting, so I watch a lot of programming about them, and sometimes I'll see something that I think is cool, and I'll try to recreate it in the game. In terms of armor, it's very much the same. I have an unofficial series of armors that I call my cool outfits from mediocre movies line, since I love cheesy and terrible movies, especially the ones from the 80s and 90s, which, despite their terrible plots and acting, often have cool-looking outfits. Rocky S. Roger wants to know, what is your design process? My process begins with gathering reference photos. I'll find as many high-resolution shots as I can from as many angles as possible. I then study their shapes and look for pieces from the game that I could use to recreate the most distinctive features. I find it's easier to go piece by piece instead of trying to recreate the whole gun in one go, because otherwise you get overwhelmed. I'll just focus on recreating the grip, or the front sight, or whatever, instead of trying to find a shape to match the entire receiver of the gun, for example. I'll ask myself whether those shapes can be broken down into multiple smaller shapes, which makes it easier to find pieces that could match. Once I've got the key features made, I'll fill in the remaining gaps one by one using the same process of breaking them down into smaller shapes until I end up with a finished gun. Once I'm ready to import the gun into the game, I'll usually consult Wikipedia or the Internet Movie Firearms database to get an idea of what its real-world properties and capabilities are. Then I'll do my best to interpret those into the stats relevant to the game. Jimmy Jangy asks, what inspired you to start making mods, and what is your main discouragement? I started making mods because I didn't like the texture on the handguard of the Chinese assault rifle in Fallout 3. It's this ugly, bleached wood color that I just couldn't stand, so I wanted to change it. I thought it would be as simple as editing a texture, but soon found myself having to learn about extracting files from BSAs, editing file paths in NIF scope, and all this other stuff. Eventually it got to the point where I realized that I could use these skills to make my own ridiculously overpowered weapons. The first weapon mod I ever made was an assault rifle edit, where I added a maximum zoom scope and changed it to fire 308 rounds, which did something like 9999 damage per shot, easily able to one-shot deathclaws and vertibirds. From there, I made a silenced 10mm pistol that fired 44 magnum rounds for similarly high damage, and a pair of sunglasses that would give me the stealth boy effect whenever I crouched. From those simple stat edits, I started experimenting with making unique meshes for them, and it snowballed from there, eventually arriving at where we are today. As for my main discouragement, I think I speak for a lot of mod authors when I say it's having to deal with entitled, ungrateful people who don't seem to appreciate the fact that mod authors are unpaid volunteers who chose to share their work with the community. The kind of people who leave comments like, "Your mod broke my game, so you'd better help me fix it right now." Or, "This aspect of your mod is wrong because it doesn't jive with how I think it should work. Change it." Or, "Your mods have been absolute garbage lately. Why can't you go back to making cool stuff like you used to?" And it's like, dude, I've already gone above and beyond by making the mod in the first place, and then again by allowing you to use it. I don't owe you anything. Fortunately, people like this are rare compared to those who are appreciative and supportive, but just dealing with one entitled prick is enough to sap my creative energy. Our next question comes from Amazingly Muggy, who wants to know, are there any weapons or armors that have given you lots of trouble to make? The things that have given me the most trouble are ones that have never been released because I still haven't figured them out yet. But of the things that have been released, I'd say the one that took the longest was the Proletariat Assault Rifle, my AK-47 analog. The AK has such a distinctive silhouette that it's important to get it right, and there aren't a lot of base game meshes that come close. This is where that process I was talking about earlier of breaking it down into smaller pieces really helped to get it made. Mateus Christian asks, how do you handle gameplay balance for your weapons and armors? I'm not overly concerned with gameplay balance for the most part because I don't have the patience to sit down and hash it out. But one thing I do to take care of it automatically is to find a base game weapon or armor that fits within the same tier or category as the one I'm making. Then I'll base the stats for my object around the base game object stats, and add mine to the same leveled lists as the object I'm copying. That way, the distribution remains somewhat fair without me having to put in a lot of time and effort. Nice Meme wants to know, how complete do you think the Mega Pack is, percentage-wise? I'd say that the Mega Pack permanently sits at around 90% complete. There's always more that could be added, and as long as I have ideas and a computer that can run the GEC, I'm going to keep adding stuff. But if I were to stop here, I think it's still a pretty decent mod in its current state. Omega Neo wants to know, do you own any real guns that you've based mods on? Before I answer this, if anyone from the government is watching, I want to make it very clear that no, I don't own any guns. Not a single one, no sir. Please don't raid my house. That being said, I do have a lot of airsoft replicas, all of which have been made into mods in one form or another. In particular, the payload rifle, enhanced battle rifle, and mini machine pistol are all directly based off of airsoft replicas that I own, as are several of the uniques, such as the Wolverine and the Hammer of the People. Warcrimes TV wants to know, how do you feel about the Fallout community's demand for mods and the expectations it places on mod authors? I try to insulate myself from that as much as possible. I notoriously refuse to take requests, and I actively discourage people from sending me ideas or suggestions precisely for this reason. I make the things that I want to make and that I'm passionate about, and that way I'm not answerable to anybody but myself. If other people like it too, that's great, but if not, it's not my problem. There are people out there who, even after you fill the request for them, will complain, "No, that's not what I meant, you did it wrong!" And I just don't want to have to deal with that. So I do everything I can to keep to myself. That way I can retain 100% of my creative freedom, because if you're making something that you aren't totally passionate about, what's even the point, right? Pianto asks, why don't you use third-party extensions like NVSE? This is just in case I ever get zapped back in time to 2008, before any of those third-party tools were available. I want my mods to still work. Yeah, that way I could release them earlier and become famous while the game is still widely relevant. No, the serious answer is twofold, with the first reason being a practical one. I want my mods to remain accessible to as many people as possible, and every added dependency is an additional barrier to entry. It doesn't help that New Vegas is already a precariously balanced house of cards, and the more you pile on top of it, the greater the chances of cascading failure. Ideally, all my mods would be plug and play, without the need to tweak any configuration settings or install any additional tools. The second reason is an artistic one. I'm a firm believer that limits inspire creativity. When anything is possible, you're not going to take the time to examine things from every angle to explore all the other possibilities. take movies for example. If you have an unlimited budget and carte blanche to do whatever you want, you're not going to take risks or think laterally. And the end product is going to be something safe, bland, and homogeneous. Look at the Marvel movies and how each one has to have that obligatory CGI slugfest in the third act. Why? Because those set pieces were in development long before even a single frame of the movie has been shot, so they're locked into that ending. There's no wiggle room to incorporate happy on-set accidents or last-minute flashes of inspiration. Now, compare that to a filmmaker who has to pinch every penny and milk every last ounce of value out of whatever limited resources they have. In those cases, you need to get creative in your problem solving because you can't just brute force it by throwing money its way. Like during the production of Jaws, where a malfunctioning mechanical shark forced Spielberg to film most of the shark scenes from the shark's point of view, which made for a more tense experience and ultimately a better movie. So, long story short, I find it more fun, challenging, and creatively engaging to discover unexpected workarounds or think up new effects if what I wanted to do originally isn't possible in the vanilla engine. Our last question comes from Satellaview64, and oh boy, here we go. Why did you stop uploading to Nexus Mods? The answer is complicated, but basically it's because Nexus Mods changed their terms of service to essentially say, anything that's been uploaded to our servers is ours to do with as we please, and if you don't like that, don't use our platform. So I decided, fine, I won't use your platform then. In the end, it boils down to corporate greed and how Nexus Mods is profiting off of the work that we mod authors do for free because we love the game. They're violating the community spirit in which these mods are made, and I don't like that. I also didn't like not being given the choice to opt out of their scheme, because I make mods for the joy of making mods, not because I want to be compensated for my work. I never opted into the donation point system. I always turn down paid commissions. I don't have a Patreon, and whenever someone offers to donate money to support me, I always tell them, thank you, but if you can, please donate it to support Ukraine instead. I'm not out to make money doing what I do, but that doesn't mean I want other people to make money off of me. So that's why I left. These days, I run my own website where all my mods are hosted. I still update pretty regularly, so if you like, you can check it out at fallout.firedrakecreative.com or click the link in the description. Well, that's all we have time for today. Huge thanks to Mutant Mods for putting this video together and inviting me to be a part of it, letting me feel like a celebrity for a day. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions. If I didn't get around to answering yours, or if you didn't submit yours in time, I'm active on social media, and you can find links to all my socials on my website at fallout.firedrakecreative.com. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.